I know this is my personal belief, but there is so much spiritual ego. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
the egos that exist in the spiritual community are some of the most, they can be, I should say, they can be some of the most manipulative and narcissistic if, in terms of what I've encountered. Because, like, when you expand your consciousness, when you evolve your consciousness, your ego doesn't disappear. Like it doesn't just,
Mm-mm.
it's always going to be with you. And I find that the ego it has to become more clever for its survival. So there's just have been certain situations that I've been in like the most spiritual situations. And I'll just be so triggered by like one person that's a complete and total narcissist. And I'm like, how is no one seeing this? And
Yeah.
I think that's also why so many people who don't consider themselves spiritual avoid spirituality, because I think there are certain people that can that are very weary of spiritual teachers or gurus or teachers or guides that kind of appear very like these cult like leaders almost, like I know, for example, my girlfriend, like she by nature is an extremely spiritual person, but she refuses to label herself that way.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
happens. And some of the most enlightened people I've met
Hmm.
in my life, like our gardener, I'm like, that man is enlightened because I see him working in the heat with his little hat and he sings and he's happy.
Yeah.
And there's this sense of he walks with peace. And I'm like, this man
Hmm.
is living the dream and
Yeah.
he's the gardener. And he's not preaching about
Yes.
spirituality. And it's so funny
Totally.
you bring this up because I once dated somebody that calls himself a spiritual teacher.
Hmm.
What a shit show that relationship was. It
Really.
all, yes, but you know what? It was so good because it yanked me out of that thing you're
Hmm.
describing, of that spiritual ego, of demonizing the ego. Guess what?
Hmm.
It's here. And what our relationship to it is what really matters. A
Hmm.
relationship, and can we have space for the ego, and can we have space for our divine nature?
Hmm.
Because if not, you're in a state of absolute chaos. And
Yep.
what was interesting about this relationship is that, you know, he talked beautifully about it, about non-duality, and it was very like, it's like, wow, like there's so much wisdom.
Hmm.
But he couldn't sleep at night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I used to wake up, I was like, why can't you sleep? He's like, I'm having mind attacks. My ego is attacking me because I have so much light that my ego doesn't want to die. And I'm like, fuck, like
Mhm.
this is, everything on the surface and daytime is like,
Yes.
hello, like this is me. Oh yeah, like I'm one with everything.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was like jujitsu mind, wizard,
Mhm.
just like boom, boom, boom. But he did not have peace and joy.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
was constantly insecure. I'm
Yep.
like, that's not spiritual,
No.
in my opinion,
Mm-mm.
because for me to be spiritual is to be in harmony with yourself and the world and spirit, and
Mhm.
all your shit and your shadows and your
Mhm.
humanness.
Yeah, and I think this is what I mean when I talk about like this glorified view of spirituality. I think some of the biggest like spiritual teachers that we see on social media, I just sense that there's kind of a front, there's a persona of like what this spiritualist is supposed to be putting out. But like there's such a specific narrative that they share, and it's only kind of one half of the picture. Like there's so many people not talking about like the darkness that's experienced, and like kind of working with the ego, managing your ego. And I mean, I have the same thing. Like, I'm so devoted to this path of returning to myself. And I really love sharing this information and this knowledge. But at the same time, I go through such lows, and I'll
Yeah.
have these nights where I can't sleep either. And my mind is really like also my worst enemy. And I'm trying to be in harmony with that. And I try to be very transparent and honest about, and I think this is why shadow work is so important, and talking about the shadows within ourselves is so important, because yeah, there's just so many teachers out there that put out a very particular perspective and then kind of hide the rest. And I hope that the spiritual community can change in that way, because it seems like spirituality is blowing up right now. Like, and it
Mhm.
should be, because the world needs it. People need to heal. But I do really fear so much false light, like so many
Yeah.
false light narratives, and so many teachers that are actually just low-key narcissists. I don't know if you even like experienced that level of it.
Yeah, I've had experiences where that's interesting, that subject of the spiritual narcissism,
Mm,
because I remember when I met that guy that I was talking about. I met him with another guy. I didn't know who he was, but apparently I found out later on he's like kind of like a cult leader. And I remember
the
that
guy that you were
when
dating or the friend?
no, no, no. The
Okay,
friend
okay.
of the guy, he was a cult leader, and I found out later on. But during that time, they like I met them all at the same time. So like I was like flirting with my ex-boyfriend because that's the one I like. But then this guy was flirting with me. It was kind of like one of those situations. And
Mhm.
the guy that was a cult leader, he once sends me this gigantic text message saying like, the light of consciousness of the 70 wants to transmit itself through me, through my heart, to blah blah blah, like huge. I'm like, wow, this doesn't mean anything. Like it's just like a bunch of big words.
Words.
Basically the gist of the message was that if I slept with him, I was going to get enlightened or some shit.
Oh my God. Wow.
And then I remember telling my ex-boyfriend about it. He's like, oh my God, he must be a narcissist. And then we like demonize that cult leader because it's like he's the narcissist. And then we're both talking
Mhm.
about it. And then
Mhm.
in this relationship, I'm like, oh my God, I think my partner is a narcissist. And then I'm like, you're a narcissist. And then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I'm a narcissist. And I'm like, shit, I am a narcissist.
I've
Oh
had
my
this
God.
same awareness. Thank
Oh
you.
my God. And I realized that that narcissistic virus was living in me. I was like participating in the I'm better than you, and you're this, and this is shadow, and that's your ego. Like
Mhm.
I got stuck in that shit. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh no, 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 no. I don't want this. And during that time, I actually changed my line of work because I was very much into, like, I was a spiritual healer. That's what I was, a spiritual healer. And I'm like, I'm out.
Mhm.
I'm going to become a coach. And then I became a
Mhm.
coach because the coach has a little bit more of the grounded term. And yeah, my coaching, like, there's no way that I can not talk about the divine. It's just impossible for me to
Yeah.
do. So it's there. The healing's there. It's happening. I'm
Mhm.
transmuting that energy, but I'm not giving it, I'm not saying like, I'm going to send you a healing right now,
Yes.
or that's your ego. It's like, no, you know what? I got my ego. I got an inner narcissist. I got an inner bitch. I got an inner, like all of the things that I observe in reality and judging others. I can pinpoint at least one time in my life where I have engaged in that energy myself.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if I just take everything like I am that, yes, and I feel it and I sit with it, then it has light. Then you have
Yeah.
put the eye of awareness onto it, and then it's no
Mhm.
longer this hidden enemy on the background. So yes,
Totally.
we are all the things. We are the narcissist. We are the monster. We like, and I something very triggering that I'm going to say. So maybe trigger warning, everyone, is
Mhm.
that women that say that they have been victims of narcissistic partners have a
Yes.
narcissistic side to them.
Totally.
What? But I was abused, I was manipulated. The narcissist part of you is the part that refuses to feel the pain because it wants to feel whatever illusion the relationship is giving you. Like that's
Mhm.
a truth that it hurts, but it will set you free if you can start looking at it. Everything we observe exists within us, and that is freedom.
Totally. I'm so glad you brought that up. I got really trapped in that illusion as well of being the empath, like
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
like so many light workers, so many people like in this realm of spirituality. It's like, I am the empath, and we really glorified this term. And to be the empath in an empath narcissistic relationship, there's a certain level of power to that, because it's like, oh, woe is me. I am the victim. I am the empath. I am the victim to the narcissist. But in that,
Mm,
there's this narcissistic imprint of Please
Yes.
pity me. Please feel sorry for me. Please help
I'm
me because
entitled to that pity.
yes, and I am better than the narcissist because I am an empath and they're a bad person exploiting me. When in reality, and I've realized my position as an empath, like, and this was so confronting that I have allowed other people to overtake my energy. And also, like, in being this empath, like, there's a certain level of like, I know for me anyway, there was like, I can heal this person. I can fix this person. I'm the only one. And
Yes.
that is also very narcissistic. And yeah, it was interesting because also within this, when I encountered, there was a specific ceremony that I went to where I encountered a narcissist, which I just mentioned before. And it was such a triggering experience because I was like, how could this happen? Like, how could I like come to a space where it's such a high frequency? There's the people that are here are so amazing. Like, how has this person ended up here? Um, and I couldn't get it off my mind. Like I was like, how have I like managed to encounter a person like this on my journey, which is a little bit narcissistic in itself to think like, oh, like I am so high and
I'm
mighty.
so clear
I'm
and
so
pure.
I'm so evolved. How could I, the light worker encounter a narcissist? And it was so confronting. And it was like after encountering it, like a couple of other narcissists as well. And I was like, oh my God, they are mirroring an imprint that I have within myself that I have yet to clear. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's so amazing that you bring this up that like we all have like this wound of narcissism, this kind of imprint of narcissism, the shadow of narcissism, I should say, exists in all of us. And of course, it's going to be just as present in
Yeah.
spiritual spaces. So,
Yeah, and I think an important point that I want to make is to depolarize what is the energy of the narcissist, because it sounds like it's a word that's so energetically charged. It's like that could
yes.
be the worst thing you could be. But what it narcissism develops whenever you experience trauma
Mm-hmm.
and you are unable to have to feel the emotional imprint of that trauma and you don't have the support to help you with that. Therefore, you develop an identity
Mm-hmm.
that protects that, and it protects ourselves from feeling that at all cost, at
Mm-hmm.
all cost.
Mm-hmm.
So in that energy, the narcissist is just a type of wound that is, it has a lot of like power, protective power behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of the day, everything that we judge as like that's bad, that's terrible, that's monstrous, the product is just a product of a wound.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get wounded? Because our innocence gets imprinted in a very painful way. So it is our inner
Mm-hmm.
child, it is our most
Mm-hmm.
innocent self that gets that. And how can we demonize the part, the child that got imprinted, that formed the carcass to protect itself, that developed the narcissistic
Mm-hmm.
personality to protect itself? It's like at the end of the day, it's just a distortion created by trauma.
Yes.
So it depolarizes it. It's like, no, it's not that the narcissist, I've read articles, it is a psychopath and blah, blah, like even the psychopath has a story. Like
Mm-hmm.
for as long as we keep engaging with this you versus me and you're bad and I'm
Mm-hmm.
good, we're stuck in it. We are stuck in that wheel of duality, and we can stay stuck there as long as we want. But if we want to
Mm-hmm.
experience real genuine peace and freedom, then we gotta get out of it by realizing that there is no other.
Mm-hmm.
It's all us.